Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. Bella Sarah. Book 1, Bella's Gift. Chapter 11. Okay, before we get started, just a quick reminder that this is a chapter story, and if you have not yet seen the previous videos, I suggest you go back and view those so you are caught up with what is going on in the story. Connell entered the castle courtyard at a swift trot. Inside, wolves stood anxiously at attention as Ivina stormed through their midst. "Connell!" Ivina said, noticing he had returned without the other animals or the girl. "Explain yourself, you worthless hound!" Connell strode over to Ivina. His golden eyes were ablaze with anger. Not a trace of fear remained in his being. Facing his mistress, he let out a growl. The sound flowed from deep within him. His message was clear. He had betrayed Ivina, had helped Bella and the others escape, and he was not sorry. He would no longer serve this cruel mistress with her hateful tyranny. At once, Connell felt free. Ivina stood in stony silence. Slowly, a flush of red rose in her pale cheeks. Her eyes narrowed. Finally, she spoke, her words daggers. "I hope you enjoy your final moments." She stepped closer to Connell, her heavy metal staff echoing dully on the stone floor with each step. When they were just inches apart, she raised her arm with the staff high in the air, ready to strike. To Malfoy and the remaining pack, she called, "He was always a runt, small and weak. And he is still weak, isn't he? Isn't he weak?" The pack howled in agreement, quick to turn on one of their own. Malfoy turned his back on his son in disgust. Connell braced himself for the impact of what Ivina was about to do. He was ready to face whatever violent magic flew from her staff. Ivina's face twisted in a wicked smile. "Since you think so much of those dear little horsies," she said, "and since you obviously want to be free, I'll grant your wish." Ivina threw back her cloak and pointed her staff directly at Connell. A flash erupted from the metal tip, searing into Connell's fur. He yelped in pain. Then everything went black. Moments later, a dim light filled his eyes. The sound of the snickering pack filled his ears. As he blinked, the courtyard opened up once again before him in hazy detail. Connell knew he must get far from Stigmore. He tried to rise to his feet, but he fell. Something was wrong. He tried again to rise, but slipped sloppily against the stone. He could feel no sensation in his toe pads. His legs. What was happening? Connell blinked again and looked down. Then he saw. His paws had been replaced by hooves. Horses' hooves. For a third time he tried to rise, this time managing to stand unsteadily. As the sensation returned to Connell's legs, he realized his body also felt strange. His once coal-black coat was patched with gray and white. A simple saddle was strapped on his back. Looking up, Connell saw his reflection in one of the castle windows. His eyes widened as he took in his spindly, skinny legs, his stubby mane, his familiar tapering muzzle, and white fangs. He was no longer a wolf, but he wasn't a horse either. With horror, he realized that Ivina had turned him into an unnatural blend of the two creatures. He was part horse, part wolf, and all freak. Connell gazed at himself in blank confusion, and Ivina began to cackle. "You don't know which side to choose, do you?" she said. "Wolf or horse? Now you forever be caught in the middle, part of neither pack nor the herd." Malfoy's lips curled, and he growled menacingly at Connell. "This freakish beast is no son of mine," he snarled. "Indeed not," Ivina agreed. "I'll say it's time for Connell to be leaving." She slammed her staff on the stone floor and glared at Connell. Get far away from here, you disgraceful mutt," she hissed. "Let's see how you fare out in the world. I'll give you a head start, but I'm releasing Malfoy and the pack when the moon dips below the mountaintop. I wouldn't want them to catch up to me if I were you." Connell found himself in the frozen woods surrounding Stigmore once more. This time he was alone. He wished for Jillian's company, the face of a friend. His mind was still in shock, his body stiff and strange. His new legs faltered with every step. Stumbling through the snowy night, he gazed at the mountaintop looming in the distance. The moon had begun its descent in the sky. It hovered now just near the mountain peak. A fierce wind blew, shaking snow from the trees and piercing through Connell's thin new coat. He shivered and forced himself onward. Then came a low, menacing howl in the distance. Malfoy. The wolf pack was ready to hunt. Connell tried to run, but his hooves slipped in the snow. It's no use now. It's no use, he thought. How can I run with these ridiculous clawless feet? The pack would soon be upon him. Gazing again at the looming mountain, Connell made a choice. Instead of trying to outrun the pack on flat ground through the woods, he would climb up the mountain. It was a dangerous plan. If Malfoy and the others found him, he would be trapped on the mountainside with nowhere to escape. But there was no other option. Connell was certain he would not outrun the pack through the woods. With a heavy heart and faltering legs, he began to climb. Exhausted, Connell reached a ledge partway up the mountain. He was climbing a stretch that was sheer cliff. The only way up was a steep, narrow path that wound back and forth along the cliff face. His legs burned, and he had to stop to catch his breath. He knew he could climb no higher. Suddenly, he heard movement on one of the clearings below. Something was rustling through the trees. Connell held his breath as he peered over the ledge. Malfoy burst through the trees, his eyes glowing in the dim light. He sniffed and snarled at the ground, barking at the wolves behind him. It looked like the pack would continue on through the woods, but then Malfoy stopped. "Be still," he snapped at the other wolves. "The wind has shifted." Malfoy threw back his great black head and sniffed the night air hungrily. Then he turned slowly in Connell's direction. Charging at the lead, Malfoy led the other wolves up the steep climb. Connell heard the yelps and howls growing closer and closer until at last they were there in front of him. Malfoy stepped forward. Connell stepped back. He knew he was trapped. There was only the ledge and the ground far below. Looking at the great beast before him, Connell could scarcely believe this evil creature was his flesh and blood. He would rather be half horse than a mere image of this vicious wolf. A defiant bravery welled up inside Connell. Malfoy snarled and took another step forward. But this time, Connell did not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward. From deep within his gut, he released an ear-splitting howl, somewhere between a wolf's cry and a horse's neigh. The ground trembled and the other wolves scattered in retreat. A snowdrift on the ridge above began to quake. In his mind, Connell heard a gentle voice speaking to him. "Close your eyes and leap, Connell." For once, Connell did not question. As he flung himself off the ledge and into the air, he felt invincible. Just as Connell jumped, the snowdrift above thundered down in an avalanche towards the wolf pack. There was an eruption of howls from the pack, which cut off abruptly. Then the night air fell silent once more, except for the wind.